Okay, good evening or good afternoon, Richard. Tonight I've got a pleasure to interview Richard Sylvester from UK. He's actually a non-duality teacher, and he's done lots of talks all over Europe. And I watched him actually a lot in the past. He's really quite a good watch, and that's what I find. So yeah, I met him last year in London, yeah, anyway, so it's such a pleasure that Richard said yes to this interview all the way to Australia. And yeah, how are you, Richard?
I'm fine, thank you. Yeah, it's a nice sunny day here in England. Yeah.
Oh, is it like a springtime day still? Is it?
Better than springtime. It's early summer. Yeah, it's been very nice. Yeah.
So it's a nice day today.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And you guys are still in this isolation thing. Is it? I've heard it's happening. And how is it going with you? Do you like that, or do you miss out and stuff?
I'm not going to say I like it. No, I mean, we can't go to a cafe and get coffee, which is really, really troublesome. But you know, we're managing. Yeah, we're managing. It's very difficult for some people, but I live in a very very nice town, very near a very quiet park where I can do Tai Chi every morning. Yeah, it's okay.
Wow. Does Tai Chi help to beat this situation? And
Oh, Tai Chi helps with everything.
Yeah, you don't need it, Richard. You don't probably, but anyway.
I tell you, my body needs it.
Body needs. That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah, I know. I started doing gym myself lately, and yeah, I'm really into it. It's so much better, you know, like you perfect inside out, in a way. Okay, Richard, you've written so many books. I think about 5 so far. Did you? Yeah, and I've got a latest copy of your Confessions of a Seeker, which I truly enjoyed. A friend of mine, Margaret, she gave it to me. And I read it actually. I didn't go through the first to the last chapter. I just went through, you know, whatever chapter from the middle towards the end, and it's really a good one. I didn't realize you went through so much and so many years of seeking.
Many years.
Yeah, and how did you find that? Like, would you change any of it now, or do you find it was helpful? Or
well, it was interesting.
Yeah.
I'm going to say it was very. Of course, I wouldn't change any of it, nor could I. But it was, yeah, all very interesting. Some of it was painful, some of it was enjoyable. Yeah. But was it? Did you say was it useful?
Yeah.
On a kind of psychotherapeutic level, yes, some of it was on that level. Yeah.
All right, and I actually like the title of one of your books. I love actually each time I hear the title, I laugh. It's called I Hope You Die Soon. And then you had drink tea, eat cake. Was it?
Yeah.
And there was a book of No One, and one was Non-duality Questions and Duality Answers, wasn't it?
Book of No One and yeah.
So what prompted you to write the latest one, Confession of a Seeker?
Well, it's a kind of obvious question, but in a way it's also difficult to answer because, if I'm honest, all I could really say is, well, there was an energy there to start doing this. And then there was an enjoyment in actually doing it, and so that's what happened. It just kind of happened, and the idea of me writing it feels a little bit absurd to me. It's like the book wrote itself in a way, like all books do. But I mean, autobiographically, there was a specific thing. I got into a new relationship about 5 years ago. And as I suppose often happens with new relationships, we sort of sit around and tell each other stories of our past. And there was a point where, it was suggested to me, gosh, this is really interesting. You should write this down. And of course I thought, well, no, it can't really be that interesting. But my partner said, oh, yeah, so I just went and sat in a coffee bar with a laptop and started playing with the idea, and you know, found that I enjoyed it. And then I'd read bits of it, you know, to my partner, and she'd be very encouraging, say, no, that's good, you go on, you know, write more, write more. And so that's kind of how it came about. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Good stuff. I'm really glad you've done it, because I'm really, to be honest, for me, it's hard to read these non-duality books. They kind of, sometimes they kind of similar to each other as,
Sure.
in a way, and this was really different, and there is a sense of like a quirky humor in it, and, and like your kind of humor, you have really this great sense of humor. That's what I noticed when I watched your interviews anyway. And I'm really curious now, because you mentioned you and your partner, and she encouraged you to you know, write this book. And how does it work with someone like yourself, but when Richard disappeared in a way? And yeah, basically, does it help relationship or not necessarily? The recognition?
I think the answer to that is it might or it might not. It depends. I think, I mean, I'll use kind of commonplace language, although we know it's misleading. So I'm going to use the phrase "when this happened to me," which is a ridiculous phrase because, you know, nothing happened and it wasn't to me. But nevertheless, at that time, I wasn't in a relationship. This was quite a few years ago. I think for people who are in a relationship, if there's no empathy or understanding with what's happened in their partner, it can make life very difficult. And I certainly know of relationships that have broken up because of this. And that can be for, you know, various reasons. Perhaps the most obvious one might be that there can be a kind of sudden loss of interest in things that were interesting to that person before. So if there were, say both partners were interested in spiritual seeking, and that might have been the glue that held their relationship together, and then one person, you know, well, their personhood, let's say, disappears and they see the emptiness of everything, and a very common result from that might be a complete loss of interest in what we might call spiritual seeking. And so the glue that held those two people together might suddenly be gone. And that can be very upsetting for the partner who doesn't really understand what's happened. And so sometimes that can create problems, sometimes it can create the end of the relationship, but not necessarily, you know, not necessarily. Yeah, so that wasn't a problem for me because at that time I wasn't in a relationship. You know, all those, I can't even remember when it was, all those years ago. And I'm very fortunate now because my my partner, Dawn, you know, she absolutely, you know, sees this, knows this. I mean, you know, whatever word we want to use, sees it, knows it, understands it, empathizes with it, you know, so there isn't that difficulty there for me.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, which is a, you know, which is a blessing. It's a real blessing when that happens. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I've really come across people whose relationship actually didn't work, even after one recognized their true nature, so to speak. Yeah, and yeah, because the second one didn't understand them anymore. Even the first one, probably they took them there to have a look, but there was nothing, because I think in like there was a disappointment in a way, because they expected something else. They expected a saint, some perfect, you know,
Right.
no one. Yes, so that can be disappointing, don't you think?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I know cases. I mean, as you know, I hold meetings, and I have cases of people who come to my meetings and they cannot tell their partners where they're going.
Wow.
I tell them they're going somewhere else. I don't know. They tell them they're going to a, I don't know, a nightclub or a racetrack or a brothel or something, but they cannot tell them that they're going to a non-duality meeting.
I loved it. Yeah, that's true. Actually, I don't know. Like sometimes I was like, even like the other day, I spoke to my mom, and she's so scared. Like she loves me, she approves of anything. If I wore nothing, she would say yes to it. Seriously, but like, but if I mention a Buddha, that's it. She thinks
Yeah.
I'm a freak or something. So it's really hard to talk to
Yeah,
normal
no,
people about it.
it's a terrifying cult. I mean, I understand it. I mean, yeah, the non-duality community, it's a really terrifying cult. You know, it takes hold of our minds and our lives, and oh, it's awful.
Yeah.
But what can you do?
Yeah. Well, in a way, it's kind of, I don't know if you've noticed that, but it can be that way, because people like seekers, also they think it's a way of life, but literally it's not like you basically go back to, you have to work and you have to earn money, isn't it? So
Hmm.
how does it work for you? Is it like easier now, with your everyday life when you meet like ordinary people and stuff like that? Does is it easier, or since your recognition or your awakening, or not?
That's a good question. I mean, if people want the answers to that to be yes, I'd say it's complicated. It is easier in some ways, yeah. It is easier in some ways. Maybe it's not so easy in others because, I had been I'm going to put this in the air quotes, I had been a spiritual seeker, and a very sincere and serious one, for a long time. I had a lot of friends and acquaintances in, again, air quotes, the spiritual world. Um, and some of those people I completely lost contact with. They just couldn't fathom what had happened to me. I mean, those were probably acquaintances rather than friends. But no, I had friends who were pretty puzzled about what happened and why is it that I don't still share the same enthusiasm and quite the same belief systems that we had before. And we get along fine now. This is now many years later. We get along fine, but there's
Mm.
still that kind of feeling of a kind of something about me that they just don't really, can't really fathom, can't really understand. Why did I go so weird? And whatever it might have been, stop going to the, I don't know, stop going to the meditation group or whatever it might be. And again, I think that's it's quite a weird it's quite a weird state of being, this, because then I have a lot of friends and acquaintances who aren't remotely interested in anything spiritual. Again, um, not really interested in non-duality. They're not really interested in anything psychological either, pretty much. And it's kind of like they think they get me, and then there are occasions, and I can see there's this kind of look in their eye, like, who is this guy? I thought I understood this guy, and I thought we were on the same wavelength, but then suddenly he's just said something really weird, and I don't know what to make of it. I can see that look in their eye. I've got one or two friends like that. So I think basically, once this terrible thing that doesn't happen has happened to us, I think basically that's it. That's the that's the kind of end of normal life, really. And I'm very fortunate. I live near London, and before the entire planet was put under house arrest because of this virus, I would, regularly. I hold meetings in London regularly, and I go to Tony Parsons'
Yes.
meetings as well.
Yeah.
And there's a whole lovely community of people, both at my meetings and at Tony's. And there is something really, I almost want to use the word relief, but there's something really lovely about once or twice a month hanging out with people who kind of know in some way what this is about, and accept the apparent madness of it and don't question that.
Yes.
Um,
Mm.
yeah, I mean, I sometimes say to people, the reason, if I'm holding a non-duality meeting myself or I go to somebody else's, it's like, that's my church. I mean, again, church very much in air quotations again, but you know, there is something about that. You know, I know that, okay, you know, there's going to be a bunch of us sitting around the table, and maybe we're all a little bit mad in individual and different ways, but there is one way in which we do kind of understand each other and what we're saying and what's going on, and it's not questioned, and it's kind of really relaxing to be around that.
That's
Yeah.
great. So basically, yeah, I met you last year when I went to see Tony Parsons and interviewed him quickly, and then you were pouring a cup of tea. That was really gorgeous to see, and to see that you guys get along so well. And you know, it seems you know, you get together. Then we went shortly to the pub.
That's right.
Yeah,
Beautiful
yeah, it was
afternoon. I
really, yeah, it
remember it.
was just gorgeous, and I was like, really had the best day. And do you guys, like, you know, also Jim Newman? And
I know. I haven't met Jim.
yeah,
No, no.
oh, okay, you haven't
Yeah.
met. All right. Yeah, because yeah, it was really good to see you then, and you know, we had like good fun. It was just, I was like, what a small world, like being from Australia, like we knew you, like I came and I saw you and I saw David, actually introduced me and all of that, and just to people afterwards, and it's a great community. And yeah, it's, what else would you need? It's something in common, and you know, to get along with these people is fantastic. And I was going to ask you also, I didn't ask you last time, did you know Nathan Gilbert? I think you
Yeah,
mentioned him in your book, did you?
yes, I knew Nathan. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
so you were pretty good with him, did you? Were you? Or, yeah.
I'm not sure that's an Australian expression, is it? What does it actually mean? You're pretty good with him.
Like, I mean, you were friends, or you
Oh,
knew him well?
no, I knew him. Yeah, yeah. I knew him a bit. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So
Very, very, very lovely guy. Yeah.
lovely guy. I really liked his stuff. Oh, it was so good, like so clear. Like the message was so unique,
Mm.
and lots of people were shocked as at stuff like that. Like, how can this happen? What was
Yeah,
wrong? You know,
yeah.
how can you how can you describe such events like?
I wouldn't even try. It's just, you know, it's what happens. You know, stuff happens. You know, and stuff happened to Nathan and for Nathan. I know a little bit about the kind of, you know, the biographical stuff. I'm not going to go into it. And
Mm,
yeah,
yeah.
you know, this is not a guarantee of. This is not a guarantee of. Well, it's not a guarantee of anything. It's certainly not a guarantee of a sort of, you know, a wonderful problem-free, beautiful
Mm.
life surrounded by angels and halos. You know, life goes on. You know, non-duality is not seen and life happens. Non-duality is seen and life happens, and it might change or it might not. Yeah.
Do you have that with basically seekers approached you and try to argue with you the fact that basically you can be in pain and you can have all these things happening in a life still, because I mean, this is a dream, but it's still like these dream character things happen, like the pain in the body that can be sometimes really unbearable. And like I got attacked a few times. People were telling me, like, people who had the pain, they did not know, they were not truly recognized as something, but you learn not to argue with them. So do you have people really coming to you and arguing with you about that fact, to say, believing that you are a special, you have to be special or something like that, out of this world, like?
Do I have that? Not too much, I
Yeah,
hope. Yeah,
yeah.
it can happen. But I think it's it's the basic functioning of, you know, very deep psychological impulse in us, which is the impulse of projection. You know, we can't help that as long as we're in a certain psychological state, we will be projecting out onto other people all the stuff that we don't find in ourselves, and that'll be bad stuff and good stuff. So when it comes to gurus and saints and so forth, we're projecting our good stuff onto them. So whoever's sitting in the chair at the front of the room, whether they've got a long beard and a golden gown or not, you know, it's irrelevant if we're in that state that we're looking for someone special to tell us what life's about or to lead us to some kind of realization about life. We will be projecting onto them all sorts of impossible qualities. And of course, then it's a terrible, terrible shock when we discover that what we've been projecting onto them is not how they actually are. Because nobody can be that kind of perfected being that we, you know, that we imagine. I mean, this is why I think a long time ago in one of my books I wrote, the best guru is a dead guru. Because the dead guru will not let you down. You know, you are not going to wake up tomorrow morning and find that, you know, Gautama, the Buddha, Siddhartha, you know, has taken a new lover. Why not? Because he's dead, and he's been safely dead for 2,500 years. So if you don't want to be disappointed in your teacher or your guru, then choose a dead one. But obviously, you know, we tend to be attracted to living ones. We project this wonderful, we may project this wonderful saint-like being on them. And then, you know, we are very disappointed when we wake up to discover that they're in bed with a new lover, or maybe they're in bed with us, who knows, you know. Maybe we wake up to find they're in bed with us and we're very pleased about that. Later they go to a new lover, and then, you know, so projection is very, very powerful. You know, we project, you know, everything bad in us, in ourselves that we don't acknowledge, we tend to project on somebody else, some other person or people, and make them a scapegoat. And everything good in ourselves that we don't recognize, we tend to project onto someone else and make them a saint. So, you know, saints and sinners, you could say. A saint is simply somebody we project our good stuff onto, and a sinner is just somebody we project our bad stuff onto. It's a bit of a shock when that falls away. You know, when all of that falls away and you're just kind of confronted with, let's say, people, a person, and you're not making that projection anymore, it's a bit of a shock. You know, I mean, it happens in psychotherapy. That's often when people leave psychotherapy. It's when they recognize that the psychotherapist is just a human, just like themselves. The guru is just a human, just like themselves.
But I find that most seekers still kind of defend their teachers, regardless of what they do. Like the recent one being Robert Adams stuff that has come out, and I've heard stuff about Amma also. But people...
I love gossip. Are you going to tell me or not? I don't know about Robert Adams.
You haven't heard?
No, absolutely not. I'm an innocent. I just sit here in England. I'm completely innocent. So if you want to go into the gossip here, please do. But if not, we'll move on.
Yeah, I don't know. There are some allegations that, like, that women similar to your ex guru Muktananda.
So Guru Rajananda.
Yeah. How was seeing him? How was meeting him for you?
Just before we get on to that, just go back to what you were just, the point you were just making there before you mentioned Robert Adams. What you were saying? Oh, how people go on defending their teachers.
Yes.
Yeah, that's exactly how it works when we're projecting. Of course, because it's like part of it. You know, our ego becomes bound up. You know, we've made an investment in this teacher, and our ego is bound up in them, and the projection's still going on. So it's too painful to acknowledge the reality, which is, you know, this guy or this woman is just like any other human being in a way. So it's kind of easier to defend them, and to, you know, people remain unbelievably loyal sometimes, regardless of, you know, the horrors that come creeping out of the woodwork. But again, that's just sort of part of our psychological enmeshment. You know, when projections collapse, it just becomes much easier to go, okay, well, that was an experience, and then walk away. And you could say there's much less attachment in that sense. I mean, in a way, attachment to some extent does come from this psychological projection. As I mentioned before, it can be the same with a psychotherapist. We can become, you know, desperately attached because we see them as somehow as superhuman, you know.
Well, I understand that attachment to start with, but it seems that with some people, it, you know, it just goes on. It never stops. I
Yeah.
just don't get that one. Like, that beats me seriously. Like,
Well, it's just because that, you know, that psychological pattern is still running, you know, and so that person will never get free. So maybe, you know, if they see through one, let's say a psychotherapist, if they see through one, in other words, they realize that they have feet of clay just like anyone else, they'll just go on and find another one and another one and another one. You know, I mean, I sometimes think that, you know, the best thing for the client to do is to train as a psychotherapist themselves, because in doing that they'll meet lots of other people doing the same thing, and then it will become perfectly obvious that we're all just ordinary human beings. Yes. And there's nothing particularly special about us. It doesn't matter whether it's a psychotherapist or a spiritual teacher or a non-duality speaker. But then, of course, you've got some I'm not going to name names here. I don't think. I probably won't. But then you have some spiritual teachers and non-duality speakers and so forth who really play up to that. You know, who really encourage those projections. So they kind of go the whole guru hog, as it were. You know, so it might literally be they wear the guru robes and the beads and the flowers and the long beard and the big holy special hat, and you know, so you know, some of us play up to that and encourage those projections, and some of us don't. And I mean, it's all the same in a way. It's all just one big game in a way. Yeah.
Isn't it just that it kind of pulls us astray a bit to celebrate the messenger and neglect what's been said, in a way, pointed to? You know, I think it's a bit unfair to suck people in, you know, and look at me, I'm special, and you know, I've got something you don't, and when you get this, how do you see this? Like, is it a bit of a misleading?
Well, I don't know what to say to that, because you know, you've already mentioned my last book. It is quite obvious from that book that I spent many years following such people and, you know, enjoying it hugely. So you know, I mean, as I sit here now at this stage of my life, whatever the hell that means, I think I'm very unlikely to go and sit at the feet of a master again and gaze up adoringly into their eyes and sort of see their perfected golden halo around them. But if I think back to you know, the younger Richard, when I was doing that, it was fantastic. You know, I loved it. You know, so what can I say?
So you can't change it, really. Like, you can't do anything about it when you're in that situation, because it has to hit you. Isn't it? Yeah.
I mean, that takes us back to that good old non-duality saying, what happens, happens. You know, if we're in that state where we're going to be attracted to that kind of dance, that kind of theatre, it's a kind of spiritual theatre in a way. If we're going to be in that state, then that's what will happen. Nothing wrong with it, nothing right with it. It's just that is what will happen. And then there may come a time when something different happens. Yeah. But I wouldn't, you know, if I could go back and change all of that, I wouldn't. You know, it was really fun and exciting. And there's a sort of tremendous buzz from thinking that, you know, we're doing something really meaningful, you know, for the planet. You know, we're ushering in, you know, I don't know, we're kind of helping a new avatar to appear on the planet, or whatever it might be, you know. It's lovely stuff.
Well, I presume
something changes, and you know, then something changes, and you know what that something is. It's indescribable, but you know what it is. Something changes, and then that just all becomes irrelevant. And it's like, oh well, you know, I think I'll have a cup of tea. You know, I don't think I'll save the world today. I think I'll have a cup of tea instead.
And relax. You said something really good about Buddhism. Like you said something about relaxing. It's all you do is just relax, and that's pretty much it.
I am quoting somebody else there.
Yeah.
I have to. I can't claim that for myself. It was somebody else who wrote that. Relaxation is the key to Buddhahood here and
to
now.
Buddhahood, yes. I wrote it down. I don't know where I put it. Yeah, so you did. Yeah.
No, I heartily approve of that. Yeah.
So do you, like, what do you think now? Like, there are people who believe, I presume it depends what teacher you went to or when you got this, you know, whatever, nothingness from. Some say that you need to get these pointers, and pointers help you see through. Some believe there is investigation to be done. Some believe it just happens by itself. And there seems to be like a big fight about it. Everyone's claiming this is right way, that's the wrong way. And how do you see that?
Well, how do I see the big fight?
Yeah, like how do you see, now, do you reckon there is only one theory about this, like that recognition or awakening, or more theory? Yeah.
Clearly, there are lots of theories about this. I would just say that none of them have any purchase whatsoever. You know, and I mean, I'm just going to go back. I hope I don't say this too often, but I'm just going to go back to say, well, what happens, happens.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, of course, you know, the mind loves argument and dispute and making others wrong and, you know, making this right and that wrong and so forth. So, yeah, there are, you know, there's certainly quite enough people out there saying all sorts of different things about this, but essentially what happens, happens. You know, if seeking happens, it happens. If seeking stops happening, it stops happening. If self-inquiry happens, it happens. If self-inquiry happens, doesn't. If self-inquiry doesn't happen, then it doesn't. It didn't happen here. Nevertheless, I think I am going to assert, and there may be those out there who disagree with this, that when this is seen, it is seen that it is acausal. It is seen that it has no cause, and it is seen that it is completely impersonal in the sense that it cannot have anything to do with what I, apparently as a person, think that I have chosen to do. So, you know, I'm going to sit here on this comfortable settee and assert that, and I'm sure there'll be people out there who would disagree with me.
They always disagree. People disagree in advance before you say.
Sure. I have to say also, in my favour, there's plenty of people out there who will agree with me as well. And, you know, when I use the phrase, you know, the seeing, whatever we call it, the seeing of non-duality, whatever, is acausal, I am obviously quoting lots of other people who said it first. I'm not being remotely original in saying that. But it just seems to me it's kind of in the realm of the bleeding obvious when this is seen. That's part of the shock of it. Is that, oh, this could not possibly have anything to do with anything that I think I am as a person, or anything that I feel I have done as a person. Yeah.
So you don't feel like you've done anything. Richard has not done anything about it. It just
no,
happened.
absolutely not. Absolutely. I mean, you know, this character has a memory, of course, in which I believe and think, or I have a story in which I did many, many things, including following gurus and doing psychotherapy and training for this and that and the other, and teaching meditation and who knows what. No, but when it comes to this, of course, no, it's nothing to do with me. And incidentally, neither was any of that other stuff that seemed to be to do with me. So in a sense, you know, I mean, that last book you referred to, in a sense, it is an autobiography. Yeah. But it's ludicrous because there is no autobiography.
You did say it, I think. It was quite funny.
What?
You said it. It was quite funny. I think you quoted it. There's no autobiography, or you said it in one of your interviews. I watched it, and that's quite good point, actually. Yeah, there is no such a thing. Yeah.
Yeah,
You said something about fiction or non-fiction, but you said that's a fiction too.
yeah. Well,
Of,
yeah. It's an obvious question to ask about a book: is it fiction or non-fiction? But in a sense, that disappears. That distinction disappears. In another sense, it doesn't, because there's memory, and in that, you know, there is a memory. So there is something called personal history.
yes.
Because there's a memory, but that personal history is also seen to be, well, I like that. I don't know if we've used this phrase yet. I like the phrase, you know, real and unreal. It's seen to be both real and unreal.
Yes. Yeah. I like that actually. It's really good. And Tony says it too. I can really
Yeah,
understand what it means. So it just
yeah,
hits home
yeah.
each time. Yeah, so basically, I've heard you also said the other day, like I watched one of your interviews, and you said you mentioned someone, friend of yours, they were worried about their boredom. They were like, because they were going to retire, and they talked about being bored, and they asked you about it, like because they had to do something during their retirement, but then means you don't get bored, you laughed because there's no such a thing, isn't it, for you?
Well, yeah, I think I always feel like, you know, issuing a warning at this point. You know, we're on dangerous ground when we sort of start talking about effects in, you know, in character and experience and so forth. But nevertheless, I think there are certainly tendencies which are commonly reported, and which, you know, I would report here, of things, let's say, certain kinds of experiences which simply die. And boredom, I would say, is one of them. I'm not saying that always happens, but it certainly seems to be a very strong tendency that it happens in a lot of cases, that just boredom dies. I mean, that's certainly happened here. Um, there's a strong tendency for depression to die as well. And somebody else, I was talking about this in a meeting once, and somebody put their hand up and said, and loneliness. I thought, yeah, that's right too. Yeah, loneliness is another thing that tends to die. Yeah, yeah.
So for you, does it matter if you're with people, or if you're alone? Does it matter if you don't have people around you?
Yeah. Well, I think the honest answer to that is yes and no, in
Mm.
the sense that, in an absolute sense, no, it doesn't matter. You know, there is quite a strong tendency here to be perfectly okay for long periods in solitude. So it doesn't matter. In another sense, it does matter, because I really enjoy the company of some people. Not all people. I can think of quite a few people whose company I do not enjoy, but I can think of a lot that I do enjoy. So in that sense, yes, it does matter. So if you were to ask me, we're in this strange situation here. We've been locked down for a month now with the virus. I keep feeling I need to say the virus in case somebody's watching this in 10 years' time and thinks, what the hell are they talking about? Why were they put under house arrest, these people? You know, because we're under house arrest.
Yeah.
You know, so I can, you know, we've been under house arrest or locked down here for about a month now. And, you know, in some ways it's fine. Absolutely fine, and I'm very self-sufficient, as a lot of people are. But, you know, do I miss certain things that I do with people? Yeah, you know, yeah. I've been in an improv group for some years, and we meet once a week, and we have a lot of fun and practice, and occasionally we do performances, which is lovely for the ego if people laugh and so forth. So do I miss that, doing that every week? Yeah, I do, yeah. But is it okay? Yeah, it's fine. Yeah, it's fine, the fact that we're not doing it, but I also miss it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And because you mentioned that now, isolation again and current situation, there are lots of these conspiracy theories going around. So someone actually asked me to ask you this question.
Who asked you to ask me this question? Somebody
Well,
very mischievous, I'm sure.
no, it's a friend actually.
Okay.
It's Margaret, friend of mine. She said, "Can you ask Richard about conspiracy theories?" Because she was bombarded with, people clashing with each other. Oh, no, such a thing, and
Yeah.
and she said, "Can you just ask Richard?" She's interested to find out your point of view on that. So
That's the question. What's my point of view on conspiracy theories about the virus?
yeah.
I have no time whatsoever for them. No time at all. I just think, it's just continuing evidence of how mad the mind is. I mean, conspiracy theories about anything, but let's stick with the virus. Absolutely no time whatsoever for numerous reasons, but one of which is that you can just endlessly speculate about conspiracy theories. You will never know, so what's the point?
Mm.
It's like speculating about which world religion is right, which is rather missing the point that they're all wrong.
Mm.
But if you ignore that, there's still the point that you can speculate forever. It's an entertainment for the mind. And I could go a bit. I think also that conspiracy theories do tend to both stem from and appeal to very unhealthy parts of our psyche. So I'll say that as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
But they're alarmingly popular.
Mm.
What can I say?
Yeah. Yeah. I was like,
I'm going to throw something in here, and you
yeah.
may or may not want to cut this out of the recording. I'll leave it up to you. But I did an interview for somebody else.
Yeah.
I'm not going to tie the date down too precisely, so I don't want to give away which one it was. But I did an interview with somebody else, let's say sometime over the last 400 years, and we got on to conspiracy theories. And I got quite. I said what I really think about them. And when it came to editing the recording, they cut that bit out. Not because they wanted to, but because they were advised by people that if they left it in, they would be bombarded with hate stuff and conspiracy theories. And, their feeling was that would then detract from the rest of the interview, of the tape, of the video, because it would suck up all the attention, as it were. So they actually cut that bit out. I was quite happy for them to do that as well. They did, they asked me about that, and I said, yeah, fine, go ahead, because I didn't want it to be consumed with this nonsense either. I just think it's utter nonsense.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
there you go.
No end of it when you start. Yeah.
As you can see, it's very difficult to get an opinion out of me about conspiracy theories, and I feel very mildly about them.
Yeah, yeah.
No, I just think I've got no time at all.
Yeah.
And I think also I have a rule, which I did actually put into the last book about the conspiracy theorists themselves, which is don't enter into any communication with them. There's no point. It's a waste of time. Yeah. It'll just suck your energy out, drive you mad. And in the end, you might even end up with your own head down the rabbit hole, which is not a nice place to be.
Yeah. But do you still again, with this situation, it's nothing to do with conspiracy theory, but in a way, do you still that the planet is overpopulated at the moment, and there's too many people? Like someone said, there is like a horde of elephants in the room now. Like it's not just an elephant in the room.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, well, various times people have said, the trouble is that the planet's overpopulated. But my reply is always, yes, but who's going to volunteer to leave?
Yes, no one.
I mean, I can't remember what date Malthus was. I can't remember if it was I think it was the 18th century, when the population of the planet was a tiny fraction of what it is now, and he thought the planet was overpopulated then. So obviously he was wrong. Yeah. I would say, well, it depends how you organise things on the planet. I would have thought even with the population we have at the moment. I mean, I'm going into an area I shouldn't really go into, partly because it's nothing to do with non-duality, and partly because it's something I know nothing about. But When did that ever stop me from talking about something in the past? So I think probably we have a population that this planet would be perfectly capable of supporting in quite a healthy way, if only we organise things differently. But unfortunately, we're incapable of organising things differently.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean, if you wanted, I could go on. I could give sort of one example. One example, you see, I'd say, you know, the planet might. I don't know. I haven't done the calculations, but the planet might be capable of supporting transport at the speed of buses and cars for everybody on the planet, as long as it's public transport. But the planet is clearly incapable of supporting everybody moving at that speed in private transport. So we've kind of gone down the wrong road, as it were.
Yes.
You know, I remember Ivan Illich years ago. Ivan Illich, the guy that wrote Deschooling Society. I don't know if he'd actually worked this out scientifically or not, but he claimed that the planet could support everybody traveling at the speed of a bicycle. So if we only had bicycles, everybody could have one. So no, I think kind of, I think these kind of conversations or arguments about the population numbers of the planet miss the point, really. It's just we're really, really bad at the way we organise stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, that got a bit kind of away into the real world, but there you go. Yeah.
Yeah, but I know, you know, touching on this actually and this situation now, like also there are many people who are afraid and they don't know how to handle this situation because they can't stand isolation and to be alone, and they freak out. And do you think meditation would help them, or like, or something like that, like to as a patching, as a bit of a
I think you're very wicked asking me questions like that. You know, these are not the sort of questions you're supposed to be asking me, just like the last question. I shall probably regret answering these questions later. Well, I've been far too unguarded. I mean, the obvious answer to that is it will help some people and not others. Yeah, I mean, I think meditation is great if you find it great, and a lot of people do. I mean, I would put, I mean, you know, I do Tai Chi, which is a kind of meditation. I would put any technique or practice like that, I would tend to see it in the most simple terms as kind of from a psychological point of view. I mean, if somebody thinks that's a bit too mundane, I'd be quite happy to use the word psycho-spiritual, you know, from a psycho-spiritual point of view. That, you know, the question is it good, you know, does it make us feel better, or do we enjoy it, or both? And a lot of people clearly enjoy meditation. I mean, I still sometimes meditate and enjoy it. A lot of people obviously find it beneficial as well, in which case, great, do it. But don't kind of bang your head against a brick wall if it's torture for you, which it will be for some people. Yeah, but it's kind of obvious in a way, isn't it? We're, you know, in the kind of the ordinary, the world of ordinary reality, you know, we have a mental being, an emotional being, and a physical being, and maybe not a spiritual being, who knows. And it's good to do what we can to take care of all of those. I mean, I feel like what I'm saying is rather banal and obvious. You know?
Yeah. And well, for an instant, when you used to meditate years ago and now, like, what's the difference that you what's the difference in that? Like, can you?
Yeah. Well, the difference is, it's in the question. The difference is that years ago I used to meditate.
Yeah.
And now sometimes meditation takes over. So, I mean, it's a bit, you know, I don't want to kind of, you know, be accused of using this sort of, you know, these specialist non-dual terms and so forth, but it is a bit like, you know, I know I used the phrase only a minute or two ago, but I don't, I don't meditate, but sometimes meditation takes over. Yeah. And I've said before also that it's like the distinction between meditating and not meditating, it kind of blurs or fades anyway. So it's not really a thing anymore. If I go back, to younger Richard at the age of 30, it was a real thing. It was a real thing in my life.
Yeah.
It's very, very important to me. Yeah.
And now probably it's enough for you to close your eyes or just walk or relax, and that's probably it's pretty much it. Yeah.
Where like I say, the distinction has kind of blurred. Yeah. The distinction is blurred.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do people come to you sometimes with their life situations if they depressed, and do they ask you to help them in that way?
Well, I try to discourage that as much as possible. I really do. Yeah. I mean, I put myself out there for one-to-one sessions on non-duality, which in a sense is a little bit confusing, because anybody who offers themselves up for one-to-one sessions, there can be a kind of implication there that, bring me your life problems and we'll talk about them. But I do try to discourage that. I try to make it clear that what I'm offering with one-to-one sessions is specifically around non-duality. And obviously, you can't separate these things out. So of course that can, that can involve life problems, life issues. Of course it can, and does sometimes. But if somebody is really looking for somebody for therapy, I would strongly discourage them from coming to me. Yeah.
Okay, but even if people come to your meetings and they probably ask, like they've never been to, say, non-duality meeting before, so if there's something new for them, that might be something completely new for them. But if they ask you still questions because they don't know any non-duality terms, so and they ask you like, how do I deal with my life because this is happening at work for me, and do you still respond to that in a way, like?
Well, I'll do my best to discourage that kind of question and not go into it. And I think there are an awful lot of, let's say spiritual teachers or non-duality speakers or people who call themselves non-duality teachers out there who very much encourage that. And their meetings will largely consist of them doing what I call therapy light with people in the audience. So they'll kind of, the way they'll put things will invite somebody to say, look, I'm having this terrible time with my mother. I haven't been able to speak to her for 5 years, and and I'm angry about what my father and they'll encourage that very much, and then they'll kind of, work with them in front of the audience, using one of a few very, very standard psychotherapeutic techniques, as if somehow it's a spectator sport. And I certainly don't want to do that myself, and I'm not very fond of it when other people do it. But then if people get something from it, well, fine. Again, so what? It's another entertainment in a way, but it's not an entertainment that I enjoy, and it's not an entertainment that I want to take part in.
But I still find it's probably helpful for them, like, because you can bring them back to that, to say, everything just happens by itself, and could be okay, like opening for them, I presume. And
oh, well, that's different. You see, that's very different. That's not what I would call working with the issue on a kind of therapy light way. I mean, it's maybe just a prejudice of mine. Maybe a lot of people get a lot from this. It happens a lot, I know. There are some very, very big names on the kind of spiritual or non-duality circuit that do it. It's just a personal thing coming from the impersonal. It's just not something I I particularly like, but if people get something from it, great, fine. You know, there's not enough help out there in a way for all the numerous personal psychotherapeutic problems that, you know, so many people feel. So, you know, get help where we can. Yeah.
Yeah. And some people seem to like, they're big on drugs and stuff like this. They reckon drugs can help you see through illusion. Would you encourage that, or would you say it's unnecessary?
I'd neither encourage it nor discourage it. I mean, I did my fair share of, I'm going to just say, hallucinogenic drugs, you know, many, many years ago. I wouldn't probably, I'm saying I probably wouldn't do anything like that now. Who knows, you know, but I probably wouldn't. People certainly feel that, you know, drugs, you know, some kinds of drugs are been helpful to them in opening up all sorts of aspects of their psyche, and I'm certainly not going to sort of disagree with that, and especially not about drugs that I haven't personally experienced. In terms of what we're talking about here, though, you know, non-duality, I know we've wandered a long way from it, but we keep coming back as well. In terms of that, I'm going to go back to what I said earlier. I'm going to stick with it's acausal.
Yes.
It's acausal. You know, so I think, I mean, obviously drugs can give us non-ordinary experiences. I think they can give us some extraordinary and some extraordinarily wonderful non-ordinary experiences, but seeing non-duality is not an experience, either ordinary or non-ordinary. It just doesn't, to me, and I know also to quite a few other speakers as well, although not all, it just doesn't relate to the stuff of experience. Whether it's having a cup of tea, ordinary experience, or a soul journey under the influence of some shamanic drug, an extraordinary experience. You know, it's just, I mean, I had an extraordinary experience many years ago on Thai magic mushrooms. I would say, well, I described it at the time, you know, I saw God. I knew the meaning of the universe. You know, 24 hours later, I had no idea whatsoever what that meant. You know, but I would have said it. I said it at the time. You know, in retrospect, it had nothing to do with what we're talking about in terms of seeing non-duality. Nothing at all. It's another experience, transpersonal experience, or maybe a wonderful experience, but still an experience.
Okay, so it has not helped in recognition of that.
No. And I know what somebody who would want to argue with that would say. They would say, well, how do you know, Richard? If you hadn't had that experience 30 years ago, then seeing might not have happened. Or, well, logically, they're correct in that argument. And all I can say is there is something about seeing where it's known that it's acausal. It doesn't have anything to do with me or my personal history. I think that's one of the toughest things about it. That's one of the things that people most resist.
Yeah, I feel that everyone is looking for that experience, and that they think experience is that what they're looking for. I don't know. People I meet, usually, they go, I feel like this and I feel like that. You know, it doesn't matter. Like, doesn't matter how you feel. Yeah.
Ultimately, we want to be rid of ourselves, but we have no idea what that means.
Yeah. Because someone, I read it before I looked into this properly, like I read it, someone was saying, what's your thoughts? And oh my God, it's just, I kept watching my thoughts, and it was Sabine watching her thoughts, and Jesus, I went so crazy. Like, it was just nuts, you know. It was such an effort watching your thoughts and getting anxious about watching the thoughts. So what? I just don't know. So it's like, as you say, as Tony says, it's everything is as it is, and like as total and complete if you have to use words. But you know, to chop it up, it's not really, yeah.
Well, it's us chopping it up, so it's got
Yeah.
nothing to do with
No.
what we're talking about. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. It's me doing a technique. So, I mean, that technique might be helpful to me, but it's got nothing, you know, me as a personality, but or it may not be, but it's got nothing to do with what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it what you say when you say like sitting on the chair just happens, just there's just sitting on a chair? Does it mean what you just like, there is not like nothing here, there's no one sitting on that chair? Is it what you mean by that?
Well, there is whatever's arising. So
Mm.
if they're just sitting on a chair, they're just sitting on a chair. If they're sitting on a chair and feeling something, then there's that. If they're sitting on a chair and thinking something, then there's that.
Yeah.
You know, there's nothing very special about this.
Yeah. So basically there are still thoughts that arise. They don't slow
Yeah,
down or they don't stop. Is
they
it
may.
like that for you?
Well, they may, yeah, they may slow down. There may be fewer of them, and that varies from individual to individual. I've met individuals where there are very, very few thoughts.
Mm.
I've met individuals where there are a lot more thoughts, and you know, that's just life going on. You
Can
know, that's just,
people get, can you still get caught into them, Richard? Like, can you get caught basically?
oh, yeah,
Yeah.
yes, yeah, absolutely. And again, this varies, you know, but I think, yeah,
Mm.
definitely, yeah,
Mm.
yeah, but it's less likely, and
Yeah.
it has a different nature, and it's a bit of a cheat, this, but it's true. I can't explain what that different nature is. You know, something in the seeing of this, something is lost. I cannot explain what that something is. I can name it. I can say, oh, the self is lost or something. I could think of some other word, but that's just a noun. It's just a word. It doesn't actually tell us anything. But this may sound a little bit misleading because, you know, seeing this is not an experience, but if we trying to describe it in experiential terms, because you're asking that kind of question, like, you know, can you still get caught up in thoughts, which is an experience or whatever? All I can say is that something is lost, and what that something is can't be described. We can say it's the sense of self. It's something that never actually existed. So how can it have gone? And yet,
Yeah.
well, we can say the illusion of it existing disappears. So I could say what changes is that the illusion of being a self disappears, but it's just words. It doesn't really tell anybody anything, but something is lost and that is recognized. And one of the things Tony says is, you know, when it happens for you, ring me up. And in a sense, that is all one can say. You know, it's saying, you know, this is indescribable. It cannot be conveyed from one person to another, either as an experience or as an idea or whatever. But when it happens, you will know. And I apologize for the very dualistic language there. You will, of course, it won't be you who knows, but when it happens, it will be known.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm. And it can't be lost. Like again, that when
Well, it
it's
can't be.
seen, yeah.
Well, I mean, it's not something that's gained, therefore it can't be lost. There's nothing to be lost because nothing has been gained.
Yeah.
You know.
Can it be? I've seen you. You said actually before to someone that you find joy in really little things, in very small things sometimes. Like someone asked actually, can you ask Richard if he enjoys like watch paint dry? Could
Yeah,
he enjoy that? Yeah.
I think I've written. I not only that, I enjoy watching paint that's already dried. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. There's as we were talking about before, you know, there's nothing absolute you can say about this, but there are tendencies. You know, we were talking about the tendency for boredom to disappear. One of the tendencies I've noticed, not just here, but with lots and lots of individuals I talk to, is there is a tendency for a quieter life to be lived. Not always,
Yeah.
but often simply because there is just less of a need for stimulation. Because there isn't that tendency to boredom and dissatisfaction anymore, so there isn't the impulse to seek out constant stimulation.
Mm.
Now, in a way, that can sound really dull if you describe it to people, because it's like, in a way, all sorts of things that previously were very different just kind of become the same. So somebody, let's say, who was really passionate about opera, or well, it could be anything, horse racing or opera. Let's make it opera,
Yeah.
so that it's
Yeah.
a little bit tighter out. I mean, they might still enjoy opera. I'm not saying they wouldn't, but they might just lose that absolute passionate sense that they have to go and see the latest production, you know, of Der Meistersinger at Covent Garden, because basically, you know, it's okay just to sit in your front room instead. Does
So
that make sense?
yeah, I know what you mean. Like, it's kind of, there's no probably excitement as such. You can't say word excitement maybe as such, is it?
I would say, yeah. I mean, that sounds a really awful thing to say, and yet
Yeah.
there is a truth in that.
Mm.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah. There's less. Oh, you know, oh, how exciting! I'm going to. That can. I mean, that excitement. It can. I'm not saying it necessarily is. But it can be the other side of the fact that I've been sitting here feeling really bored for a week,
Yeah.
and now at last it's the Wagner. You know, we're going to go and see how lovely. So yeah, that does tend to, in a sense, you know, I mean, we do use the word oneness, don't we? I mean, maybe we misuse it, but nevertheless, and in a sense, you know, there is that sense where things more or less become one, become the same one.
Ocean or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, that could sound. I mean, I'm well aware of that. Could sound awful to some people listening to this. And they might think, oh God, I don't, you know, I'd hate to have that. I'd hate to. Well, you know, you don't need to worry about it, because you won't ever have it.
Yeah.
If it ever happens, you won't be there. So.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Exactly. You won't be there. Yeah, I slipped once. I said something about excitement because there was, I don't know, some concert of someone, and like, there is no excitement. Someone said, "You're trying to tell me you can't get excited." They tried to get an answer out of me, but I didn't go. I stopped. I didn't continue.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. I think, I mean, yeah, I mean, you know, in a sense, this is a loss.
Yeah.
It is a loss. And if I think of many, many things that I was absolutely passionate about, well, spiritual seeking and gurus, obviously, but also cultural things and things like that.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, that's kind of gone, but well, so what? Who cares? And to some people listening to that, that could sound sad. Oh, that's really sad. But no.
No, because you find joy in other things, as you said.
Yeah, there's less need for stimulation because of that. And so, as I've written, I think probably many times in various places, you know, a quieter life tends to be lived.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's really interesting. Yeah, because it doesn't matter whether you're surrounded with people or not. That's okay, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're just enjoying being with yourself, I presume.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. There's less of an impulse, less of a need to go out and create something happening. Yeah. And yet, as I was saying before, you know, here we are under house arrest, and I miss my impro chums. You know, it's fun to meet together with a bunch of impro chums and do silly things for a couple of hours on an evening.
Yeah. But you don't watch television either, so yeah.
No, I do watch a bit, not very much. No, I've watched some. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry,
News?
is that? Sorry, go on.
Do you watch the news and stuff like you?
Nah.
No.
Can't bear it. No, it's too. No, I read. I don't want to be completely uninformed, so I read. You know, I read the news feed on my phone and things like that. But no, I don't watch it. But yeah, I watch television sometimes. Why not? Yeah.
Yeah. The movies and stuff you do watch?
Much less. Well, we can't at the moment.
Yeah.
But much less, and it means much less to me. Yeah, I mean, I've got a small group of friends, and we used to kind of go to the movies together every so often locally. And obviously, we can't do that now. But yeah, it's quite a nice thing to do, but it doesn't mean anything to me anymore. You see, if you took me back to when I was, you know, in my early 20s, I was absolutely passionate about avant-garde European cinema. I just adored it. You know, I mean, I would. Oh, you know, I could sort of give you a list of the French New Wave movies that moved me most when I was in my 20s. It would be a very boring list, but I could give it. Of course, that's all gone now. Yeah.
It's gone.
Oh, how sad, somebody might say, to which I'd say, no, not really. It's fine. Don't worry about it. Yeah.
And do you think that some people think this situation might move people to look into this more, to look into themselves and see that the life is not what it is, especially now that they see that things can be changed, that you probably don't need to catch public transport. So what can I do now not to catch public transport? You know, can it stay this way? You know, and can I maybe, I can be moved and change my life, you know, rather than being in rat race and stuff like. Do you think that it might change a bit for people? Like,
well, in a way, we'll have to wait and see. And my guess is no more informed than anybody else's. But I tend to think probably not. I tend to think the tendency will be that things will go back to how they were as far as possible. I mean, I think things will change. Not because people want them to, but because they'll have to. You know, I mean, God, who knows how long this is going to go on for and how much change there will have to be. But in more general terms, no, I think things will sort of drift back to how they were. I don't think this is going to see a great kind of leap forward in the evolution of the planet and people's thinking about the planet and so forth. I might be wrong about that, but I doubt it. You know. Yeah. We've seen these catastrophes before, and by and large, things tend to go back to where they were, and then, or change in a way which is not necessarily a desirable way. No, I don't see this as a kind of great opportunity.
Sorry.
No, I don't know if I was. I think one of the problems about this situation, if people who've got quite a big public profile, which I don't have, I've got quite a small public profile. I think they feel, well, perhaps they really want to, but I think also maybe there is a feeling that they have to make pronouncements about what's happening now. You know, so there's an awful lot of YouTube videos out there from very well-known public figures. Some of them spiritual speakers, a lot of them not, and they're, you know, saying this and that and the other about this situation, but actually there isn't very much to say about it. You know, it's very difficult to talk about this situation without being banal. So far I've resisted the temptation to make any YouTube videos about the coronavirus situation. I feel like, no, we don't need yet another one of those. There's too many of them out there already.
How is your memory going? Like, can you remember things? And
my memory is awful. And this is not just a function of age. It may be partly a function of age. No, it's something you hear very, very commonly, and I will absolutely assert that, you know, there is something about this, whatever you want to call it, this explosion into seeing or whatever. It really does bugger up memory.
How do you deal with that? Like, how have you got some prescription?
Write things down. Not really, no. It can be very frustrating because, you know, a brilliant genius idea that can come which will transform the world or whatever, and then 10 seconds later it's gone and there's no possibility of getting it back. So it can be quite frustrating. I mean, usually I have to say it's not a genius idea, but no, you just have to write things down or let them go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but this is not just me saying this. I've talked to a lot of people about it, and it's very, very common. There's something about that kind of explosion into seeing that just really does mess with memory, and it messes with it in another way as well. It doesn't just make memory sort of even worse than it was before, but also in terms of of the past. You know, memory making up the past, or the past being made up of memory. It kind of takes the reality out of it in a way. It's very difficult to explain this, but you know, I would say that for many people, the past is a very, very real country, and they visit it often, and quite often those visits involve a lot of pain, a lot of emotional pain. So we can have a very big emotional investment in the past because it seems so real. And there's something about this seeing that just kind of wipes that away, not in the sense of destroying the memories themselves, but in the sense of, well, the phrase that comes to me, so I'd use it, is sucking the reality out of that.
Yeah.
So like we could say the autobiographical material is still there, but the impulse to go back and visit it disappears because in a way it becomes unreal. So if we think of if we think of, say, let's say one energy in psychotherapy, only one energy in psychotherapy is quintessentially about visiting the past and revisiting the past and revisiting it with a lot of energy and investigating it and trying to feel new things about it and things like that. It's like that goes, it just goes. Yeah, even a split second of seeing and that can just be gone.
So basically you can recall the past, but
Yes.
for a split second.
No, you could recall it for as long as you like, but it doesn't have the emotional charge that it would have, that it might have had before. Yeah.
Yeah. And now you know that you forget stuff like, I mean, how do you forget to go to some meetings? Did you have situations where you've forgotten something important?
I haven't so far
Yeah.
forgotten. Two things I haven't done with my own meetings so far. I haven't forgotten to go to one, and I've never fallen asleep in one of my own meetings. I fall asleep in other people's meetings, but not my own. Right. But basically, in essence, the answer to your question again, I really have to write things down.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I could have something really important to do in that, I needed to get ready for in 20 minutes time, and I could forget it. So I really have to write things down. Yeah.
Oh, that's, I don't know if you maybe record it or put some alarm clock on, I don't know. Like, what's the best way to?
I put it in my diary on my phone, and then I forget to look at it.
Yeah.
So if it's really important, there has to be notes on the kitchen table.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Wow, that's a tough one. And I just remembered something else to ask you. You mentioned in one of the interviews something kid-like or childlike, like you said something about being a child, and then I can't remember exactly what you said. Something like adult is such and such as child plays like this, like spontaneous. They're in a moment. Like I don't know what you said. Yeah. So is this like now like childlike? Do you feel like your life is spontaneous, like watching this as a play, like the life?
More so.
Yeah.
Yes, more
Yeah.
so. But yeah. But I mean, watching life as if it's a play seems to me to imply a kind of detachment, which is not what this is. It's very difficult to describe. I would say, if anything, there is more engagement.
Okay. And
Rather
focus?
than, maybe more focus. Yeah. But yeah, so it's like, yeah, yes, watching this like it's a play implies to me a kind of standing back, a sort of witnessing, a sort of detachment, which is sometimes advocated as a kind of spiritual technique, and I think probably not very wisely advocated in that way. But no, I think, you know, absolutely, it's like, if anything, there's more engagement rather than less. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'd never describe this as detachment. No.
Okay.
And I mean, the child is very engaged.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sort of super engaged compared to the adult very often.
So basically you get focused and you get involved into something, and people might, like, you might get distractions, but you kind of focused.
I think there, yes, again, I think there is something about this where it's like, yeah, there's a kind of natural increase in focus, kind of concentration in that natural way, not something that's forced. Yeah, I would say so. Yeah. Fewer distractions when there's something that needs attention. Yeah.
Or does it mean that some kind of work can be probably done more efficiently in a way? Because
I would say so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't want to make this sound too utilitarian, though.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
There's nothing we can do about it. You know.
Yeah.
This helps you to do your accounts more efficiently. No, I don't want to go down that route.
No.
I think that,
Me either.
I think there's more kind of natural creativity in this,
Yes.
because I think, you know, I think there is a great deal of natural creativity anyway, but it gets blocked by all sorts of other things, you know, all sorts of other concerns and so forth. So if some of that other stuff falls away, then the natural creativity can come through more.
Yeah. Just reminds me of these composers, like the famous ones. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, and then there's that understanding also that it really isn't personal. You know. So the creative act itself,
yeah,
you know, it really is. It's just something that happens, and it's not really personal.
yeah.
It's not, you know, it's not really you doing it or me doing it. Yeah, I think that's particularly clear when it's a creative act. Yeah.
Do you also find in that instant that your kind of natural talent, so to say, I don't know if it's a proper word, like come out more? Like if you...
Yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah.
Yeah, for anybody. Yeah, because again, it's not that something's added or increased. It's that something that might have been blocking that is taken away. Yeah. Yeah, so whatever it is that we might be good at doing is more likely to manifest because the blocks to that are likely to decrease. Yeah. But and equally, it might just be that we just spend a lot more time sitting around.
Yeah.
Staring at the paint that's already dry.
And where do you hold your meetings? It's not the same place where it's not in Hampstead, no?
No, I used to hold them at a different place in Hampstead. No, I hold them sort of near, in another area of London, Notting Hill Gate. Yeah.
Mm. And when you travel around Europe, do you find some people more open to this, or more like to your message?
You mean nationalities?
Yeah.
Do you mean different nationalities?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, I've mostly been to Germany. I was going to Germany 2 or 3 times a year regularly. And I would say the audiences there are very like in England.
Mm.
Very similar to in England.
Okay.
Other countries, yeah, I went to Japan, I think about 1.5 years ago.
Yeah.
Was all I can say about that is that was interesting, and it was very interesting. It was very pleasant, but the audience was very quiet and didn't ask a lot of questions, but they were very attentive. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but most of my foreign talks have been in Germany, and it's lovely audiences there, very similar in their approach to the English audiences. Yeah,
Mm.
yeah, really nice people. Yeah.
I watched some of your stuff, of your interviews in Germany. They were quite good, actually, and you could tell really by watching it. They're very respectful and very open about.
Yeah, mostly people the people who come to the talks are very open there and very friendly, and yeah, lovely experience. Yeah.
So you don't know now where you're gonna go next. We don't know anything.
I'm going to go to the kitchen next, probably, and make a cup of coffee. But beyond that, no, no one does. You know, I mean, if things in terms of talk, you know, people sitting close together in crowded rooms in a city like London. I mean, I might be wrong, but I'd be very surprised if that happens this year. I can't see it. It may do. You know, they may put, you know, like if it's, then they could allow public meetings again with a limit of a, you know, with a limit of a number of people. So it could happen, but I wouldn't be surprised if it doesn't happen at all this year.
This year, yeah.
Yeah.
Most likely, it's same as us probably traveling. We won't be able to get there for a while. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's just a guess. I don't have any access to any special or private or even transpersonal knowledge. That's just a guess, but I think this will go on affecting us for a long time. Yeah.
So at the moment, you can't basically go in you can't be in big groups, and you can go to the shops. Is it limited?
Do you know what the size of group we're allowed to be in?
Yeah.
2.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, that's the limit on the size of group at the moment. So you could have a non-duality meeting as long as you had only one person in the audience and one speaker.
Well, why not? If it's a good audience, that's fine, and the rest can be on via Zoom or something. You could do Zoom meetings.
People do lots of stuff on Zoom.
Yeah, you can get so many people, 200-300 or something. Yeah, you should do that probably. That would be good. Okay, Richard, you probably want your cup of tea or something, and let's come. Oh, coffee.
Right where you are, it must be what, midnight where you are? Yes.
Yes. It is. midnight.
Yeah.
And your time is 3:30.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
See. Yeah. All right. Yeah. So that was good. Thank you so much for the chat, and people, if they want to purchase your books, they can do it via your website. Is it? Or are they Amazon?
Amazon. One of them, unfortunately, is out of print, but 4 out of the 5 they can buy on Amazon. Yeah. Amazon.
Okay, we'll put some information underneath, and so thank you so much, and all the best with this, and with the whole situation, and keep well and keep safe.
And you, and I'm thinking of you going out for your takeaway coffees.
Yes, I'll think of you when I go get them. Here you go, Richard. Okay. All the best, and take care. Look after yourself.